None of these work in isolation. Nutrition matters, movement matters, purpose matters. They all matter. But together, if practiced together, they create something greater than the sum of their parts. That is what synergy is. And synergy is important on your wellness journey. Now, I don't want that to be overwhelming for some because I think we're all thinking I have to do 9 different things in my week, to ensure my health. And that's not really the point here. And so if we could just address each of those and make sure that you're doing something or fitting something into your calendar that hits on those really important topics, that is what is really important and how we can really move our health forward. Welcome to the Wellness That Fits podcast, where we help busy moms eat well, restore energy, and clear brain fog without sacrificing family time or your sanity. I'm Cassie Greschel, registered dietitian and mom of 3. I believe wellness should fit your real life, not the other way around. If you're tired of complicated wellness trends and want simple, sustainable strategies for meal prep, holistic nutrition, and time-saving routines, you're in the right place. Let's jump in. Welcome back to the Wellness That Fits podcast, where we talk about evidence-based wellness that actually fits into real life. Also your culture, your schedule, and yes, even your plate. So today we're diving into one of my favorite topics to teach, to travel to, and to talk about, and that is the blue zones. So if you've ever wondered whether there's a real world example of people living long, vibrant lives without obsessing over diets or supplements, this episode is for you. So first, we're going to get into what are blue zones, where are they, what are the components of blue zones, what makes them a blue zone, and then we're going to talk a little bit about, of course, one of the main things is the nutrition aspect of it. Let's start with what are the blue zones. Blue zones are regions in the world where people live significantly longer and healthier lives than the average person. These areas have the world's highest concentration of centenarians, which are basically people who live to be 100 or more. And we're not just talking about blowing out a bunch of birthday candles, living long. We're talking about people in the blue zones tend to be healthier. So they aren't just living longer with chronic disease. They are living longer and have lower rates of heart disease, lower rates of type 2 diabetes, less cancer rate, less dementia and cognitive decline, and basically more years living independently and with quality of life. And, if you actually look into the blue zones a little bit more, a lot of them can live independently, but also part of a lot of the cultures in the blue zones is that they sometimes live with family too. So for the most part, they're living independently, but the quality of life aspect is huge. So longevity is part of the story, but health span, like the amount of time they're able to be healthy, is really the headline here and what we're going to focus on. Okay, so the 5 blue zones. So the 5 regions in the world that we consider the blue zones. And by the way, this is all studied by Dan Buettner. And so if you want to look this up, just type in blue zones, Dan Buettner, and he has books, cookbooks, all the things on the blue zones. And I just find it very fascinating. So there are 5 recognized blue zones. There's Ikaria, Greece. There's Okinawa, Japan. Sardinia, Italy. The Nicoya Peninsula, Costa Rica, and Loma, California. And that is actually home to the Seventh-day Adventist community. So different areas of the world, different cultures, different cuisines, different traditions. But when researchers like Dan Buettner stepped back and looked at what these regions had in common, there were some powerful patterns that emerged. And I'm going to talk to you about them. So these are the Power 9. These are those shared lifestyle patterns that are, he called them the Power 9 because they're so important. And he looked at each of these different regions in the world and found that these are the things that were similar amongst all of them. Okay, so we're going to go through the Power 9. And again, like I said, I'm going to really focus on one of them because one of them is nutrition. All right, so first one, natural movement. People in the blue zones don't go to the gym and work out. They build movement into their day through walking, gardening, cooking, and daily tasks. A lot of these areas, they're in, I'm not saying that everybody, especially in our nation, can get this natural movement all the time. I'm not like a proponent for only natural movement all the time, but whenever we can walk to somewhere or we can park our car further away or take the stairs or go outside and do some house tasks, anything like that where we can kind of have that natural movement, I think is really important. The second one is purpose. Having a clear sense of why you wake up in the morning is really important. And this is what Okinawans in Japan call ikigai, and it's linked to lower stress, better mental health, and longer life. Really just finding the purpose. And in Costa Rica, they call it plan de vida, which basically means plan of life. So it really comes down to understanding that you have a purpose. I know sometimes some women can get a little intimidated maybe by purpose, like thinking we need to have this one purpose figured out in our lives. But I also think it's important to have a purpose in a specific season of life that you're in. So really just having a clear sense of why you wake up in the morning is really important for longevity and health. The third one is downshift. Chronic stress drives inflammation. This is the same in all countries and all regions. Chronic stress drives inflammation. And blue zone cultures have daily rituals that intentionally release stress. They might partake in prayer, naps, happy hour, just to name a few. But there's something that these cultures are doing to release some of that stress. Number 4 is the 80% rule. People generally tend to stop eating when they're about 80% full, which reduces that pull to overeat, and it supports metabolic health without calorie counting. And so that last 20% gap, they're just kind of waiting for their brain to catch up to what they're hearing from the stomach signals. And so a good rule of thumb is stop eating when you're almost full, but not stuffed, because after that, you're just probably not going to feel well. All right, the fifth thing, and what we're going to mostly be talking about today, is plant slant. The meals in these regions are centered around plants. We talked a lot about fiber already. If you haven't heard my prior episodes on fiber and gut health, go back and check them out. But meals are centered around plants, veggies, whole grains, fruits, nuts, and especially beans, with animal foods being used sparingly or to accent a dish or to garnish a dish. It's not necessarily like center of plate, which we consider in our nation, in the US, mainstream. Like, this is what we do. You go to a restaurant and your center of the plate is always going to be some sort of animal protein. Now, some people need to eat animal protein to hit their certain protein goals. However, it can be done vegetarian or pescatarian, or in this plant slant idea where the majority of your calories are coming from plants. And again, what I'm going to talk a lot today about are beans. And beans are high in protein and complex carbohydrates and fiber. So they're kind of magical. We'll get into that in a little bit. Okay, that was plant slant, number 5. Number 6, wine at 5. In some regions, moderate alcohol, usually red wine or some sort of wine, is enjoyed socially and mindfully with meals. So they're usually doing it with meals, with the intake of other food, and also with friends. So it's a social component, and it's not in excess. Now, I released an episode on alcohol and its effects on the brain. So with this one, I think it's one of those things where, like, we know from research that any amount of alcohol is not the best for our brain. So we are seeing in research that there's a reduction in gray matter for any amount of alcohol, even moderate or lower than moderate use. What's important really is that we're doing 90% of what we can, right, to do well and to follow the science that we know is good for our health. And there's always going to be some aspect that, you're going to eat your favorite foods. You're going to have a glass of wine if that is something that is near and dear to your heart, and you do it in a social way. There are ways to do it where it's quote unquote a little bit better. But I also want to just put a little asterisk here stating what it possibly could do to cognitive function. And so balance which one is maybe more important to you. So number 7 is belong. And this one is the people of the region were affiliated with some sort of, or had some sort of faith group, or a spiritual group, or they had a certain faith that they followed, or they had a shared belief system, and that provided some social support and a sense of meaning. And so that's belong. Number 8, loved ones first. Family comes first in these regions. Caring for aging parents, which I had just mentioned briefly before, is really important. Investing in children, and also just doing what they can to maintain those strong family bonds throughout life. Now, I want to mention that I think sitting down for a meal with your family is so important. I had an episode on this one, but it can improve the children's health, like your family's health, and it can reduce risky behaviors. And overall, it can impact mental health in so many ways. And so if you're a family that's on the go all the time, running, 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 I just want you to take a second and think about how you are fitting the loved ones first into your calendar. And one great way to do that is by eating a dinner or eating some sort of meal. Maybe it's like a Sunday lunch or something, just eating a meal together. And what the research shows us is that 3 to 4 meals a week is what really is associated with those lower mental health issues, lower risky behaviors, and better health in general. So loved ones first. And how can we do that? I guess, like, how can we spend more time with our loved ones? Over the table, over eating, over enjoying a meal together, and showing our family and our kids that mealtime is a great time to nourish our bodies and to listen to our hunger and fullness cues. So it's a great teaching opportunity. Okay, number 9, the right tribe. People naturally in these regions surround themselves with others who reinforce healthy behaviors, making wellness more so the default rather than the exception. So they're engaging in community, there's social circles, maybe there's a card playing group, or they get together at a cafe at a certain time of day. They are surrounding themselves with people. And we know too that the social aspect of mental health is so important. And so this right tribe really hits on that portion. Okay, so one thing I want to mention is that I used to teach ethnic influences on nutrition at a university, and I spent some time in the curriculum to cover the diets of those in the blue zones and some of the similarities in foods that we were seeing in each of the regions that would lead to a healthier life with less chronic stress. And here's the key that I always emphasize, whether, I'm teaching at a university or recording this podcast, none of these work in isolation. Nutrition matters, movement matters, purpose matters. They all matter. But together, if practiced together, they create something greater than the sum of their parts. That is what synergy is. And synergy is important on your wellness journey. Now, I don't want that to be overwhelming for some, because I think we're all thinking, I have to do 9 different things in my week, to ensure my health. And that's not really the point here. It's just to remember that you could be hitting it hard in working out or on your nutrition or in some of these other areas, but some of the remaining ones are lacking. And so if we could just address each of those and make sure that you're doing something or fitting something into your calendar that hits on those really important topics, that is what is really important and how we can really move our health forward. All right, so I already told you I am really going to focus on that plant slant common thread today because I am a dietitian and I love talking about this. I love talking about fiber. So let's zoom in on plant slant. And I think this is where a lot of people get curious and also sometimes intimidated. So plant slant does not mean vegan, like we have to eat only plant foods, no animal products, nothing that is a byproduct of an animal, which basically is what a vegan eats. And it does not mean perfection. It means that plants make up the foundation of the diet, with animal foods used more like accents than anchors. Again, like what I said, it's not necessarily the center of the plate all the time. So plants are the center of the plate all the time. And you can use a little bacon garnish and you can use a little shredded chicken to incorporate a little bit more protein into your diet, but it's not the main thing, okay? There are a lot of plant foods that have protein in them that we can hit our protein goals with. So across the blue zones, generally, people are eating vegetables, fruits, whole grains, nuts, and seeds, but above all, beans and legumes. So we're going to talk about beans, which is a huge blue zone staple. In fact, when researchers were asking and studying these populations, they always ask what food is most predictive of longevity. Beans consistently came out on top. So let's look at what that means in each of the regions. So Nicoya Peninsula, Costa Rica, black beans. Black beans are a daily staple that's often served with rice in a traditional casado dish, which I actually had many times when I was studying abroad in Costa Rica. There was a restaurant that we frequented, and no matter where you would go in the country, honestly, because we traveled all over. We traveled to the Nicoya Peninsula as well. I was living in San Jose, but wherever we went, the casado was the main dish. And what it was is beans and rice, and then it would have usually some sort of protein like a fish or maybe a small piece of meat. And then they would have fried plantains, and then there'd be some sort of like picadillo or some other veggie. There's sauteed veggies. Sometimes they made like a slaw, or there would be again like a salsa type picadillo. And so that was like their dish. It wasn't the fish or the meat that was like the main deal. It was like this big cup, like tipped over, like kind of how you get a rice in like a fancy restaurant or something. It was like a cup or so of beans and rice plopped over into the plate. And that's like their daily staple there. I actually wrote down one of the recipes for gallo pinto, which is a common breakfast food in Costa Rica that our people who ran the house where we lived, they would often make this dish. And they would also make a dish with eggs, huevos locos, that used rice and beans as well. But I wrote that down. And gallo pinto, what it really means is gallo is rooster and pinto is like painted. So like painted rooster. And so if you think of a painted rooster, like a black and white peppered painted rooster, that's kind of what it looked like because it was rice and black beans. And so long story short, Costa Rica really introduced me to the beans and rice. And what's really great about beans and rice also is that together, like a whole grain rice or a whole grain quinoa paired together with a legume or a bean, and you get complete protein. So by themselves, it has a really good amino acid, which are the building blocks of protein. It has a really good amino acid profile. However, when you combine them with a whole grain, so rice and beans together, you are hitting all your essential amino acids that you need, which are the building blocks of protein. And so that is how vegetarians and vegans can get all the protein and the amino acids that they need. You just have to be strategic about the foods that you are bringing into your diet. All right, that's the bean story on Costa Rica. And then the next one, Ikaria, Greece. So the main beans or legumes, lentils there are lentils, chickpeas or garbanzo beans, and fava beans. And they show up in soups, stews, salads, and they're often cooked slowly with olive oil and herbs. Now, I got to tell you a quick story here. My husband's side of the family, Zach's family, does a Christmas gift exchange. It's not like fully white elephant. It's just like a Christmas gift exchange. And for this, I have in the past bought something that I would really want so that I can exchange it for whatever I pick out of the pile. And what I bought this year was a Blue Zones cookbook, totally thinking like I'm gonna be the only one who wants it, and I am gonna just somehow like exchange it, because the way our family does it is like you can either pick a gift or you can take a gift from somebody else that had already opened this gift, and you can only like exchange so many times, whatever. I'm not going to get into the rules of it all, but it can get really intense. Anyway, I was not the only person who wanted the Blue Zones cookbook. There were a few people who wanted it. And I thought this might happen, but the night before we did that gift exchange, I paged through the Blue Zones cookbook, and I'm going to just have to buy one myself because some of the recipes look so great. The Ikaria Greece recipes, like the chick beans and the stew, and like the base of almost all of these things, how they're getting their protein is from chickpeas and fava beans, and they just have some excellent recipes that really focus on the flavors coming from the olive oil, like good quality ingredients and olive oil and fresh herbs that actually have high antioxidant power. And I think it's a shift from how we think about it, because when we're seasoning dishes, we're using, there's nothing wrong with dried herbs and spices and things like that. But I think, utilizing fresh ingredients, just you can really get the most out of the antioxidant content, and also the flavor power when you can use some of those really important things, garlic and herbs, in order to flavor some maybe more blah or bland beans. And so those recipes looked really good. Took a picture of some of them. I got to make them yet. All right, the next area, Sardinia, Italy. So the beans that are in this area, a lot of fava beans, chickpeas as well, or garbanzo beans, and white beans are common. And those are paired with vegetables and whole grains as well. I already talked to you about the relationship between whole grains and beans and the amino acid profile, the essential amino acid profile, and how important that is to understand. And so what makes this just slightly different from Greece, I guess, because they're like right next to each other, there's a little bit more white beans, and I love, love, love using white beans in my cooking. I use it in so many different areas. I use white beans in smoothies sometimes. I have recipes of utilizing plant protein based like beans with a spinach berry smoothie or whatever it might be. So you can use them in smoothies, but what I mostly use them in would be like pasta salads, chilies, chicken chili, regular chili, and also soups and stews. So like a kale lentil white bean soup. It's one of my family's favorite soups. My sister-in-law just made it and she made it amazing. So I just love the fact that beans are so versatile. They're so cheap. I think with the cost of food going up, it can be really disheartening going to the grocery store. And so what I love about beans is they're a powerhouse of nutrients and protein and complex carbohydrates and fiber, the fiber that our body needs. And it's so cheap. And so love that. White beans. Oh, so small white beans on the can, like you can find it called small white beans, cannellini beans, and northern beans. Those are some white bean varieties that you can look for in a store near you. Okay, Okinawa, Japan is our next one. The beans that are common here, soybeans, especially tofu and miso. Miso is basically like a fermented soy. Please look it up. Miso is a probiotic food, and so you can stir it into soups. You can stir it into so many different things, and it gives like that umami flavor. I really enjoy using miso. I should be using it more than I am just because it has so many great benefits. And so aside from soybeans, azuki beans are also really popular in Japan. And it's similar to a kidney bean, but it's smaller, but it's kind of like reddish, blackish. It's chock full of minerals and really good. And if you can't find azuki beans in your grocery store, you could probably substitute them for like kidney beans. Beans, right? Beans are just so important anyway. It's not like azuki is like the key to life and the key to fiber. It's just that beans are common in all of these areas. I live in Wisconsin. I've purchased azuki beans, even here in the Midwest. You can find them, Woodman, some co-ops. There are some other places that have it, but just take a look. It's spelled Adzuki, azuki beans. And oftentimes you can buy them, if you're at a co-op, you can buy them dry, and then you would just have to soak them, or you could buy it in the can. There are some grocery stores that sell it that way. Anyway, those are foundational sources of protein for Okinawa, Japan. Now, our last blue zone is Loma Linda, California. And I had mentioned these are the Seventh-day Adventists. The Adventists tend to consume lentils, pinto beans, black beans, and different types of soy foods, whether it's tempeh or tofu, or as part of their largely plant-based pattern. The majority of them stay away from meat and animal products. So the majority of them are vegetarian. All right, so going through this list, different beans, same idea. And they're all kind of part of that same family and something to include in your current eating pattern. Okay, so why beans and plants? Why do they matter so much? From a nutrition science standpoint, beans are kind of a miracle food. I mentioned this already. They provide fiber, so both soluble and insoluble fiber. They're a plant-based protein, so you're getting protein from it. There are a lot of micronutrients in it, like magnesium, potassium, and folate. And then there's also polyphenols, and they have anti-inflammatory properties. I wanted to mention really quick, though, with the micronutrients, there's also iron. Most beans are decently high in iron, especially like kidney and black beans. And I got to tell you a little story here, too. So one of my kids was anemic, at his 9-month appointment. And I kind of took it like I was a little upset because as a dietitian, I pride myself in trying to feed my kids nutritious foods. And so now it's not all about like the foods. Obviously, like some things can be, your breast milk, it depletes stores of iron. And so some kids do have to go on an iron supplement or just, they have to get iron somehow, whether it's through food or a supplement. And so they asked me, they're like, "Do you want to do the iron drops?" And I said, "No, actually, I really think if I put my mind to it, I can get this kid um, the amount of iron that he needs." And so I made it a mission for a while. I had spreadsheets and everything, listing out the amount of iron and the serving sizes in beans, and then kind of translating it into the ounces. My 9-month-old is only going to eat like half of an ounce or something, or an ounce of beans if I mash it up. And how do I present it to him? Is it going to be mashed? Is it going to be cut up? Like all these different strategies. And we got his iron levels without taking drops or supplementation. We got his iron levels up within less than 6 weeks to normal. And the nurse on the phone was like, "What did you do?" And I said, because she's like, "It never goes up this high via diet alone." And I said, "I really focused on providing high iron foods like beans, like, you would think, oh, all meats, not necessarily all meats, like venison, some beef, but not chicken, not salmon." And so it had to come from a lot of like hemp, sesame seeds, chia pudding. Anyways, I'm digressing. I feel like I should probably have an episode on iron, but anyway, beans are a great source of iron, magnesium, potassium, folate. All right. And so let's take a second to talk about fiber. So high fiber, plant forward diets are associated with lower LDL cholesterol, better blood sugar control because of the complex carbohydrates that are utilized to stabilize your blood sugar. So it's not spiking with simple carbohydrates. And so complex carbohydrates coupled with protein is going to really help manage your blood sugar control, improve gut health. Again, I'm not going to focus on that. Please go to my fiber episode and realize how important fiber is for your gut health and for the gut microbes to create those short chain fatty acids that impact the rest of our body. High fiber plant forward diets are associated with lower body weight, and also reduced inflammation. And this is really important. I mean, I'm taking this information from some of the strongest gold standard evidence around that are supporting this plant slant pattern. So the Nurses Health Study and Health Professionals Follow-Up Study found that a higher intake of plant protein, especially from legumes or beans, was associated with lower risk of cardiovascular disease and all-cause mortality, basically death from any sort of cause. There was systematic reviews in journals like The Lancet and BMJ that consistently show that diets rich in whole plant foods are associated with lower rates of heart disease, type 2 diabetes, obesity, and certain cancers, especially colorectal cancers. And research shows that replacing even a portion of animal protein with plant protein can significantly improve cardiometabolic outcomes. Let me give you an example of that. So we're replacing just a small portion. Let's take chili, because this is just a perfect example. If you have like an all meat or like meat and noodle chili, depending on which area of the world you're in, but if you have majority meat chili, if you make your chili with half the amount of meat and the other half you add beans to, so you're getting your protein from the animal protein, whether it's beef or venison or bison or whatever, and then a little bit from the beans, whether it's black beans or kidney beans, whatever, you're having half and half, so portion. That's a great way to get started, where you can start including some of those beans. Another idea, if people like the deli meat salad, like a chicken salad sandwich or like ham salad or tuna salad, you can pulse in a food processor chickpeas or white beans with the meat, whether it's tuna or chicken, and put your mayo or whatever you're going to put in it and make that into a wrap. That is a great example of portioning part animal protein with part plant protein. And again, research has shown that it can significantly improve cardiometabolic outcomes. Okay, so all these strategies line up perfectly with what we see in the blue zones. So it's crazy because, like I said, it's just like different regions of the world, different ethnic cuisines, different histories, same core principles: plant slant, community, movement, natural movement, purpose. I'm not going to name them all, but all of these things were common common denominators in the reason why they live so long. And so let's zoom out. Let's look at the bigger picture because balance and synergy, this is all important. So here's the part I want to emphasize. You don't get the full benefit from food alone. I mean, I would love to say that nutrition can change everything, right? It can't. Nutrition is important, but so are some of these other aspects of our lives, like the natural movement, like purpose, and like belong, and the community aspect of it. And so when you combine nourishing food, natural movement, strong relationships, family bonding, a sense of meaning and belonging and purpose, here is where the magic happens. And balance is key. So here's your challenge for the week. I want you to take a look at the Power 9 that I talked about, those different pillars. Which one stands out to you right now? Okay, I'm going to list them. And then I want you to pick which one stands out to you. And then I want you to choose one thing, one action step that you're going to do under that specific pillar to improve your health. Okay, so I'm going to give them to you. So if you have a notebook handy, pull out your pen and paper, or just maybe you can remember it. Good for you. Okay, so 1, natural movement. 2, purpose. 3, downshift. That's that chronic stress, like doing something for chronic stress. Number 4, the 80% rule. Again, you stop eating when you're 80% full. 5, slant. Okay, eating mostly plants. 6, wine at 5. Gosh, I think some people are just going to choose this one. And then 7, belong. So that's like you're part of some sort of spiritual group or faith, or you partake in some sort of, religious group or something. Number 8, loved ones first, family first. How can you put your family first this week? And then number 9, right tribe. This is where we're surrounding ourselves with people who reinforce healthy behaviors. Put yourself in a circle of the person who you want to become. Okay, so I listed all 9 of those, the Power 9, okay? Now, which one stands out to you? Pick one of those because we can't do it all. We cannot do every single one and create a goal for every single one. So pick one. And tell me one thing you're going to do this week that you are going to try to better yourself through one of these Power 9. So maybe you're going to focus on plant slant and you're going to add beans to one meal this week. Super easy, right? Maybe you're going to focus on natural movement and you're going to take a daily walk. Or maybe you're just going to go walk for 10 minutes twice this week. Something really easy that you know you can do. Maybe it's slowing down at dinner and that's your downshift. Maybe it's focusing on your stress levels, or maybe it's reconnecting with your purpose. And so pick one, whatever it might be. I'd honestly love to hear about it. So if you pick one, you can tag me on Instagram or shoot me a DM and then tell me which Power 9 you chose and what did you do this week to improve your wellness? Because wellness that fits is wellness that lasts. And I am here to talk all about sustainable wellness, not trendy wellness, but wellness that is going to help maybe not live to be 100, but maybe live in a healthy way long enough where we can walk our kids down the aisle. We can have energy for grandkids. We can live a life of travel, being able to move our bodies and do things and have the energy to do things for a longer period of time with less chronic disease. And so if this sounds like something that sounds good to you, go ahead and pick one of those, choose one goal for this week, and tell me about it. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks so much for tuning in to today's episode of the Wellness That Fits podcast. I hope you walk away with simple, doable steps you can put into practice right away. If you loved this episode, it would mean the world if you subscribed, left a review, or shared it with another busy mom who could use some encouragement. Until next time, friends, keep creating wellness that fits your life.